my little www directory is the root of the web server. I don't want my site to be, site slash Drupal dash 6.19. I want it to be, we're going to call our site sightings for reasons that will become apparent pretty soon. But I'm just going to do a symbolic link from Drupal to sightings. I could link multiple directories to that Drupal distribution directory. I could also have multiple virtual hosts that link to that Drupal directory. In other words, you can have multiple sites running from the same Drupal directory. You just have to create a name for it inside the sites directory, inside the main Drupal distribution. So I'm inside the site subdirectory inside the main Drupal distribution. And I'm going to make a directory that's going to hold the configuration for my site, which I'm calling sightings. So I need to put the IP here, or the host name here, because the way that it looks for which directory to use is by the host name. And we're going to do it off localhost, localhost.sightings. Drupal is going to want a directory called files where it can store files. And it's also going to want a file called settings.php where it stores its settings. And I'm just going to make these world writable. That's not really good from a security standpoint, but I'm going to do it anyway. I want change mod. In real life, what you'd want to do is make these files owned by the web server so that Drupal can write to these files, but I just made them world writable. Okay, so let's actually install our site. We're going to go to localhost/sightings, and that should bring up the install. What happened was Drupal noticed that there was no site configured at the sightings name. So it all automatically put me into the install mode. So I'm just going to click. Yeah, index.php actually redirected me to install.php. But yeah, it is the index.php. So we're going to install Drupal in English. It needs a database. I've already configured a database. Database username is Drupal, no password. And it's nice under here, under advanced options, I can enter a table prefix. So every table that it creates within the database will have this prefix. This is nice because if I was in some kind of shared hosting environment and they only gave me like one SQL database, I could run several sites off of that one database. So let's go ahead and continue. And so it's actually fleshing out the database and installing some data. So now it wants me to configure the site. We're going to call our site sightings. Site email address, we'll just call it Drupal at localhost. I only put it there because it'll complain if I don't put it. Administrator account, we're going to say is admin at localhost. Password admin. It says that's a weak password, I already know that. Word GMT -6. Clean URLs. Clean URLs is a nice feature that Drupal has that a lot of content management systems don't. If you look at the our Linux user group website, yeah, which is Joomla. Actually, I've already got it open here in a tab, so let me go. if you follow one of the links, you can see up here at the top, it's got index.php, option equals, and a whole bunch of stuff that's not really that meaningful to a person. You know, it's meaningful to a computer, obviously. Well, you can enable clean URLs in Drupal, and all the URLs will be like, just have slashes and names and not a bunch of, you know, question marks, equals, and it's human readable, and I'll show you that once we get the site installed.
Nice touch.
Yeah, but you do have to configure the web server to do that. You have to let the web server, it actually rewrites the URLs and sends it to the index.php. You just don't see that in your browser. But clean URLs are really nice. They look clean. Okay, so that was our last setup. So the site is actually now all set up, and we'll go to the site. So we've got a fresh, clean install of Drupal. So what do we want to do? Well, let's create a site that will log extraterrestrial alien sightings, just for example. Let's have some pages with general info. Let's let users be able to submit sighting reports, and these reports should include the alien type and the purpose of visit, along with the location. We'll have a cool Google Map widget that will let them click on the location. And also, let's let users see a list of sightings near them and browse the sightings database. And we're also going to create a special class of users that we'll call Men in Black, and they'll be able to edit or delete reports of other users. So, let's start by creating a page or two with some general info. Where'd my notes go here? Here they are. So to create a page, what we're going to do is go over here to create content. And on this page, I can see the content types that are available for creation in Drupal. And the content management, the content is kind of your bread and butter of Drupal. And it's centered on the idea of nodes. And nodes are instances of a content type. If you're familiar with object-oriented programming, the content types, what we're looking at here, page or story, are kind of like the classes. And then the nodes would be the objects, the instantiations of the classes or the content types. Or if you're familiar with databases, the content type is like the table definition, and the node is like a row in that table. Different content types have different fields. We can configure Drupal to have different permissions for each content type, and they can be displayed and retrieved in different ways. So when you first install Drupal, you have these two types, story and page. But later we'll create a custom content type. For now, let's just create a page. So we want to create a page, so I'm just going to click Create Content Page. And we're going to call this page About Us, because it seems like every site needs an About Us page. And I want this page to appear on the menu. So I'm going to put a menu link title as About Us. It's going to be a primary link. Usually primary links are displayed somewhere up at the top. There aren't any primary links right now. And then the navigation menu is another menu of links, and that's the left. So we're putting it in the primary links menu. I'm just going to say this is a site to document alien sightings. And you know, I could put a bunch of HTML in here and make it look pretty or whatever, but I'm... Yes. It's nice that web browsers these days include spell check. I can come down here under input format, and if I wanted, I could change it to full HTML, and I could put in whatever kind of HTML I want. I can also install modules that will add a whole bunch of different input formats. Like I could write my pages in wiki markup or whatever other thing you care to do. So let's just submit it. Page About Us has been created. And so now I've got a link up at the top to About Us that pulls up my little boring page. Okay. So the point of our site is going to be to log ET sightings. So I think what makes the most sense is to create a new content type and call it sightings, because it's going to be different than pages and it's going to be different than stories. Stories are like news stories. So let's go to administer and create a new content type. So administer. First of all, let's see, Drupal is complaining that there's one or more problems detected with our installation. So let's see what it's complaining about. Okay, so it says our configuration file is world writable. So what, I already knew that. Cron hasn't run. I'm really not going to worry about that because we're not running any periodic tasks. And it's nice that it shows us all the versions of all our stuff and everything else is all good. So I'm just going to kind of ignore the status report for now. So let's create our content type for alien sightings. And I'm waiting on my computer here. It's pretty slow. You're going to hear me complaining about my slow computer probably several times through this presentation. So let's add a content type. And we're going to call this sighting. It wants a machine readable name, so I'm just going to call it sighting lowercase. Description, a report of an ET sighting. There's all kinds of options under here that we'll just peek at. By default, a content type just has two fields, and those fields are called title and body. For our sighting, the body is really going to be kind of like a report of sighting. So I'm just going to change the name there so it makes a little bit more sense. Under workflow settings, as soon as it's created, it's going to be published and promoted to the front page. We could disable this and then maybe have an administrator manually set it to publish, but we're just going to have it published automatically. Comments, let's disable comments because we don't really want comments on our sightings. We could enable a forum later if we wanted that. All kinds of options here that we're just going to leave on the default. Okay, the content type sightings has been added. So now, along with page and story, we have our new content type called sightings. And we want any user to be able to create a sighting. So let's go to user management and add that create sightings permission. So I go here to user management under permissions. As soon as I create a content type, the node system in Drupal creates permission that I can then assign to roles. And the two default roles are anonymous user and authenticated user. So we're going to let authenticated users create sighting content, check it, and edit their own sighting content. I'm going to save those changes. And note that we added these permissions to a role. We didn't add the permission to a user. Every user, once they get logged in, has the authenticated user role. And later we'll create a custom role. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a user so we can test our permissions, a regular user. So I'm going to add a user. Of course, a user can create themselves.